These cabinets have had several years of wear. They look pretty good still. There's signs of wear here, around there. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna just spruce them up. The finish overall looks good, but we're just gonna spruce them up a little bit. These cabinets had seen over 50 years of use. Now I didn't want to do a major refinishing of these cabinets, which would involve taking all the doors off, sanding everything down to bare wood, staining and finishing them again. I only wanted to just remove the handles, not take off all the hinges and shells and things that you would do with a major refinishing job. This is just a quick job. I'm going to put all the handles in a bucket with some Dawn, just to soak for a while. Get all those years of grunge. We'll be soaking there for a while. So I have these Scotch-Brite pads here. 7746. They're kind of aggressive. They won't tear the finish off, but they'll definitely scrub off the sheen and any of the grunge that's on these. So, and they will be prepped. See, they'll even get where the all those hand marks are. When I took the handles off, I noticed there was a huge buildup of dirt and grunge around where the handles were and from where people had put their hands. It's like it's taking off years of hand marks. Looks like it's taking some of the finish off too. In which case, we're probably going to have to put them with some stain just to... Looks like this finish is coming off mostly where people have touched. I'm going to try to avoid taking the doors off and see if we could do the job with the doors still on there, because it's going to be quite a task to take these hinges off. So it looks like they prepped pretty good. Just the Scotch-Brite pads. We just got to make sure we get all the old stuff off. And it's not hurting the finish at all here. As I worked over the cabinets, I noticed that many different things had happened to them over the years. The original finish had faded a little bit in some places, and in some places it had chipped or flaked. The object was to make a surface that was pretty much even all around, so that when I put the finish on, there wouldn't be a whole lot of variables. I noticed that after soaking these a little while, that's not the real color. I put the Scotch-Brite pad, and they're actually gold. Look at that. Grab one of these here. See that? That's pretty amazing. That's how much grunge has been on them over the years. They're actually gold, burnished gold. Pretty amazing. Look at that, see that? Watch. That's something. Yeah, obviously the lower cabinets are much more grungy because they're closer to the floor. They've been kicked with feet and knees and stuff like that. So you can see there's a lot of buildup there. Just got to work it down. This will take all the grunge off, but leave the finish on, at least a coat of it. As with any job, you never know what you're going to be getting into until you've gotten into it. So I've discovered a lot of surprises along the way. So in order to check and see how well I've done, I'm going to take a little bit of mineral spirits and go on there. And this gives you a little sample of what it would look like with some finish on it without putting the finish on it. It'll also show up some trouble spots in case you need to. So this gives me a little preview of what it's going to look like when it's finished. And if I see any rough spots or any spots that need to be taken down a little more, it's just to check my work. So that's what it's going to look like with the finish on it. I might want to try some light sanding. Take an old sanding pad and see. Oh, this works fine. It takes it down without removing the finish. Huh, that did a nice job. See what it's going to look like with little mineral spirits. Oh yeah, definitely an improvement. So I might want to use the sanding pad on some of that sanding screen. That's what that is. That's an old sanding screen. Just don't want to take off too much. The lower cabinets showed a lot more wear. There's a lot more dirt, and I knew I would have to treat the lower cabinets a little differently than the upper cabinets. The sanding screen seemed to give me good results on the lower cabinets, making the surface more consistent and ready to take on finish. You'll notice on the panels under the sink where the finish had completely chipped off, so that would have to be addressed. Since there was so much caked on dirt on the handles, I went ahead and used a Dremel tool with a brass wheel on it to get into the very deep nooks and crannies in these handles, and this ended up being one of the biggest parts of the job. So where it's dirty like that, I got some 120 sandpaper and just lightly go over it to take it out. The grunge was so thick on some of the lower cabinets that I had to resort to using 120 grit sandpaper to remove it, but I sanded very lightly, trying not to sand through the stain. And as you can see, most of the buildup was around where the handles were. then we'll follow it up with the pad. You don't want to take too much of the color off of it. Just want to clean it up. And we can go over some of this here. Or just a rough surface. You can just scratch a little bit. Time and wear had taken its toll on these lower cabinets, especially in places where people stood and worked with food a lot. The object was to make a consistent surface so that by the time we put the varnish on, it looked like there was no variables in the finish. So I continued prepping these panels using sandpaper, sanding screens, and whatever else I needed in order to get through the dirt without affecting the finish too much. After all the scrubbing was completed, the next step was to take some mineral spirits and tack off the surfaces. This would clean up as much dust as possible or any other residues that were left on the wood. And it also gave me an opportunity to see what these cabinets would look like with varnish on them, because the mineral spirits would mimic the varnish and then evaporate off. When I was finished tacking the wood, the next thing I wanted to do was apply a light coat of dark stain over the surface. The stain color should be a little bit darker than the original color, that way it would hide any inconsistencies. The stain helps even everything out and make a more consistent surface. I found I had to put it on a little thicker on the lower cabinets and then wipe off the excess. You can see how the stain just kind of blends everything back together again. Removes all the damaged areas. Got to spread it out really nice and thin. And so, just so it fills up those crevices and worn out areas. And then it just makes it look better before you put the varnish on. Evens out the coat. So what I used for the finish was polyurethane floor finish, oil base. And the only reason I used that is because that's what I had. I mean, polyurethane is polyurethane, and the way I was going to use it, I was mixing it 50-50 with the paint thinner. So it was very, very, very thin mixture just to make a film on the surface. And for an applicator, I use these terry cloth stain pads. They're really great. They hold a lot of finish, and you can do a lot of work just by dipping it once. I started by applying it heavily around the hinges, and then I could wipe off the hinges. I would apply it on all the hard to get to surfaces and then finish off by wiping it over the top. Basically just wiping a film of it onto the wood and pulling it out, making sure there's no drips or streaks. It's very thin, it's just going to be a thin coat. So now I was able to put the shiny new handles back on all the doors and drawers. But you can see how I didn't really get away with leaving everything in the cabinets. I had to take some things out, obviously. So in the end, I was quite pleased at the job I did. It didn't take a whole extreme amount of work. Obviously, the prepping is always the most labor-intensive part of the job. Now these cabinets are ready to use. They're cleanable again, and they don't have all that hand sludge on there from all the years.